Welcome back to our Facebook Live. Today we're talking about life supplements, and today we're really focusing on why quality sourcing matters with supplements, and really what it means, and a lot about what labeling means for supplements.
Yeah, sourcing has become kind of a catch-all term, right? Like, oh, my product is sourced well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that much. The devil's in the details with these sort of things. So we're going to talk about what some of these buzzwords actually mean, some of the labeling practices that good products use, some of the labeling practices that poor products use, and then just kind of put all of this in context with some real-life examples of recalls that have actually happened and why this stuff actually matters.
Right, exactly. And a lot of it is actually in the lack of detail in the label.
Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about sourcing, it really refers to three key things. Where the product was created or originally sourced from, in the sense of where were the animals raised? Where was the product or the plant grown? Right.
If it's a single ingredient, multiple ingredients, where did they get all of these things and pull them together?
Right. So number two is, how is it harvested? Right. How is it handled in the actual harvesting process, which is different from processing. Harvesting refers to the very first step, which is maybe pulling the root out of the ground. What happens to it after that? Well, that's when we get into processing. Right. And these are all different steps in taking a raw ingredient and turning it into an actual supplement, but not all of these steps have to be disclosed necessarily.
Right, and they could happen in different places. They could source it from one country. It could then be harvested and shipped somewhere else to be processed, and then shipped somewhere else to actually be sold, stored. And there's different quality checks at each spot along the way.
Yep. And as we're even reading about this morning when we were doing some additional research for this, that sometimes even things that are found to be verified and tested from the source later find out that those documents were forged, right? So sometimes the paper trail of documentation, there isn't always a good chain of custody.
And a lot of that, which we learned today, comes from China, where they would forge document for, let's say, purity of an ingredient, and that way they can bring it to the U.S. and sell it under certain labeling, under a certain supplement name, just based on these falsified documents.
Right. So the FDA does try to help us out, though, right? There is kind of a basic guideline for supplements, and it's the 5 key statements. And they're pretty straightforward. They give you the general information you need as a consumer, the name of the product, how much of the product is in there, the net 60 capsules at the bottom, nutritional labeling, which means the ingredients, recommended dosage, all that stuff, the ingredient list specifically laid out outside of how much of each ingredient is included. Then the very last is the place and name of business, manufacturer, packer, or distributor. And that last one is key because every product has to have some sort of communication device on there so that if there's a recall, if there's some sort of an issue, if someone gets sick from taking your product, they have somewhere to report it to.
Who's responsible?
So that's why that number 5 is on there. However, there's a lot of flexibility. It could be just a company in America that packages it. It could be the manufacturer offshores. There's a lot of wiggle room there in terms of which address you actually put on the bottle. And just because there's an American or United States address on the bottle doesn't mean the ingredients were all created in America.
Right. It doesn't even have to be put together or processed in America.
It could be just the very last step in the supply chain where, well, it came to America for our warehouse already packaged, and we just give it to retailers. So really, it has no sourcing in America, even though it has an American address on the list.
Right. And a lot of supplements just won't mention anything else about where it came from.
Right. That's the key thing. Essentially, it might sound grandiose, but supplement companies that have something to hide can basically lie through omission because all you have to do are hit those 5 things. You don't have to disclose, hey, was this cold processed or was there heat involved? And you don't have to disclose, is this a product where enzymes would be damaged by that heat process? All of that is on the consumer to kind of figure out, and it's really up to the individual companies to reveal as much as they want, which is one of the reasons why you'll see companies that don't have anything to hide will generally be as transparent as possible in terms of how their product was actually produced.
Because now with a lot of this recall information coming out and a lot of people questioning it, that's one thing that people do ask for.
Yeah.
That's something that I look for is what's in it, where does it come from?
Right.
Is that the sourcing for all of the ingredients? Are there multiple ingredients? A lot of that, there's a lot of just different factors.
And one of the other things that is included on labels that we didn't really talk about, dosing, right? And with supplements, that's always a bit of a gray area. And even variants across the same supplements, where you'll see Deer Antler Velvet products, some of them recommend 500 milligrams a day, some recommend 1,000 milligrams a day. We've even seen some that recommend 3,000 milligrams a day. And as just a regular consumer, it's perfectly natural to ask yourself, well, which one of these is right?
Why the hell is it different?
They can't all be right. So it's either there's a difference in purity in these products, or there's a difference in methodology in which they think that this product is actually effective.
Right. And we based ours on research and clinical studies that showed that 1,000 milligrams is the appropriate amount for an adult.
Right. And one of the big questions we've gotten is, does body weight affect the amount you need to take? And the answer is, of course, it has some sort of an impact, but it's not largely significant. The average size adult, 1,000 milligrams is an appropriate dose.
Absolutely.
If you're 300 pounds of solid muscle, maybe we need to talk about something a little different.
Right.
But
and that's where
you're not
always,
the norm.
You can always ask your doctor, too.
Right, exactly. But one of the other things that we didn't talk about as well, the proprietary blends, right? That's something you see on the back of bottles pretty frequently. We wrote a blog that's on the Deer Antler, the Life DAV website, kind of talking about some of these specific practices. But proprietary blends are one of the scariest ones because you simply don't know. So you'll see a blend that has deer antler velvet, maybe glucosamine, and a whole bunch of other things, and you'll see this is 500 milligrams of the proprietary blend. But they don't have to disclose what percentage of each ingredient comprises of that proprietary blend. And sometimes, you'll see interesting like trademarking techniques where the name of the blend is Black Deer Antler Velvet TM. So that's just a trademarked brand. Doesn't necessarily mean that that proprietary blend is majority deer antler velvet, but they want you to think it is.
And they'll say things like 100% natural, 100% natural velvet antler, things like that, where you don't know if it's 100% purity. Is it just 100% natural, which means there's no synthetic products, which
doesn't really mean all that much, right?
Yeah,
saying that 100% natural, aka there are no synthetic products, that's not a bad thing, but it doesn't really speak to the quality of the other ingredients or the actual deer antler velvet or where it's
and that's
from.
the big question. What does it all mean? You know, who cares if it's not 100% pure if all the ingredients are good?
Yeah.
And the problem is they could all be natural ingredients, but it's just limiting the effectiveness of whatever the supplement is. Like we know with our product, it's 100% pure deer antler velvet. That's the only ingredient within the capsule. That's all you're getting because we know that that is what produces such a positive effect. If it was 50% deer antler velvet, 50% filler ingredients, you either have to take twice as much to get the same effect, or you're just not getting the same effect.
Right. And that should always be a red flag when you see not even just deer antler velvet, but supplements where the recommended dosage is much higher than what you've seen online or for most other reputable products. That's generally a sign that their product is either less effective or has more fillers in it, and that's why they want you to take more so that you can still feel some effect. But obviously, you don't want to fill up your body with extra junk that you didn't really want in the first place.
Right. Exactly. And that kind of comes down to as well, if they're really pushing 3-4 times the dosage that everyone else is pushing, they could also just be trying to have you use more of their product.
Right.
So use it up faster.
That's right.
Which I think you talked about detergent in that way, which they recommend using a full cap.
Right. Well, you always have to take it with a grain of salt when the person selling it to you is telling you how quickly you need to consume it. And I think you had some experience with other supplements as well in the workout arena.
There was some BCAAs I was taking where they actually changed the label in the last year. I take about 1.5 scoops or 2 scoops, which is plenty. It's super sweet. I take it during my workout, so it's intra-workout. But on the bottle, it recommends 2 to 6 scoops pre-workout, and then it would say 2 to 4 scoops post-workout, 2 to 4 scoops as a recovery tool, and then 2 to 4 as like an afternoon pick-me-up. So it was up to like 16 to 20 scoops a day if you were taking the full amount that they had in their recommended section.
Which is an absurd amount, even just from a very basic, if you were to put all of it on the counter and think, wow, I'm consuming all of that every day.
Right.
It's sort of an absurd amount of supplements.
And they had to change it because there's caffeine in the supplement itself. And they added a warning that you shouldn't exceed 10 scoops in a given day anymore.
Right. Well, that's half
of what they had before.
That's a little scary. That they can just kind of make a change like that. And of course, it takes people reporting, "Hey, I'm urinating blood right now. I think we're having a problem." You know, it's scary that it gets to that point before they're forced to really reevaluate what they're putting on the label.
And the problem is, I had experience with other products. I knew generally how much you should be taking. But let's say someone brand new to working out comes in, reads the bottle, and says, "This is how much I should be taking."
Yeah,
they could run into some problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And all this stuff we're talking about isn't just fear-mongering or an effort to make our product stand out against the rest as much as it is a genuine PSA. I mean, this stuff is very real. We have some examples here of recalls of products where people were either hurt or had, the botulism scare was very real. Botulism is something that people can actually die from. There was deer antler tea from China that was sent to the States, and it was in 7 states, I think, California, Florida, Illinois, Virginia, Texas, a couple others as well.
There's a pretty big recall. Yeah.
All over the country, right? That's the point there. It's all over the nation, and if you were just one of the unlucky people to grab this contaminated product, it was the result of actually poor handling. Like, contamination is the proper word here. This isn't a filler situation, but this is this product was produced in China with the cheapest methods possible, was not handled with care, and there was bacteria.
There's no quality control, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. We saw an interesting report from late 2015 with Vitamin Shoppe, GNC. Their overall profitability numbers down like 30-40% just 2 years ago, and a lot of it was attributed to so many of their products being victim to recall, being found to contain a lot of filler content. I mean, now...
A lot of them were from China.
A lot of them were from China.
So fear of lack of quality coming from, or in products coming from China, that their stocks dropped 30%.
And what was scary about that, it's not products necessarily that GNC or Vitamin Shoppe make themselves. It's just products that they retail. So it's a symptom of like the supplement industry as a whole, not those companies in terms of they use bad ingredients. It's an important distinction.
Which it's even led to some companies either completely pulling out of selling supplements overall, just because certain supplements are just completely cornered by China, which is a lot of vitamins, like vitamin B, vitamin C, some different sugar ingredients that they put, like in gum, for example. They're just produced almost solely in China because they're just completely dominated by price. It's hard to compete with them if they're selling a product that be 20%. They spend 20% of the cost that you would spend to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we found that just doing due diligence on our product, right? We had a connection in New Zealand. We already knew our supplier, but just in the interest of seeing what else was out there, we wanted to compare prices, see if we could even find another source as reputable and around the same price point. We were shocked to find bulk 2-pound bags of ground up deer antler, essentially, for like $20 a pound. I mean, some absurd...
Like a fifth the cost of almost any other country.
It was lower than that. I mean, the deer, it was unbelievable. But when you start reading into it, you're like, is this product even bioactive? Does it do anything? Is this literally just ground up antlers, or is it actually velvet? Those details aren't even disclosed.
Completely unknown.
So you have no idea what you're buying. It could just be a bag of crap, but it's labeled as something related to deer antlers. So that's the kind of stuff you can find just by simply Googling, and that's where less reputable suppliers might turn.
Right. Because they can use these ingredients, save a ton of money in their initial cost to produce the supplement, and then generally if there's a set cost for a supplement, they can sell it in that same range and make twice as much as they would have otherwise.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about China in this particular episode or installment, however you want to call it, but it's not just China, right? One of the most recent scares or potential scares is in chronic wasting disease, which is basically the deer form of mad cow disease. It's the spongiform encephalopathy. It's where your brain basically gets holes in it and falls apart.
Right.
So in mad cow, it's transmissible to humans, and that's why it was such a big scare, 5 or 10 years ago, with ground beef that could be contaminated, and they had to slaughter all these cows and stuff. They have not yet proven that chronic wasting disease is transmissible to humans. However, these diseases can mutate pretty easily, and that's when it gets really scary. And they're finding more and more deer now, especially in North America.
It was really affecting the U.S.
Yeah, it was really affecting in like northern U.S., like southern Canada, middle of the country, where there's a lot of mountains, a lot of trees. Colorado has a lot of mountains. So it was primarily the whitetail deer and the mule deer were the two breeds most effective. Two breeds that we don't use in our products. I think we're all the red deer.
Primary red stag.
Primary red stag. So it's definitely different, but it's something to keep in mind that could be a potential scare. And this is groundbreaking, right? They just, I think the AVMA put out a press release in July. So last month of this year, they're still doing cutting edge research on this. But they also found contamination, I think, in Norway and South Korea as well. So right now, New Zealand and Australia are two of the only places in the world that work with deer where they have found zero contamination.
Because they're really strict on their importing, too.
Strictest in the world, and pretty strict about their exports as well.
Right.
So, but all of those are just go to speak and put a little bit of real life on this whole thing. It's easy to talk about what could happen from a theoretical perspective. With this is how companies could abuse the labeling regulations we have. But when you hear about these real life examples where people were actually hurt or they were able to recall it before a lot of people got hurt, it's a little scary. You know, it makes you really think twice about what you're putting in your body and really thinking hard about, okay, when I'm buying this, I need to know where it came from, what it's going to do, and what's in it.
Right. And if you just walk into a supplement store like a GNC, Vitamin Shop, something like that, if you just start reading the labels on pretty much anything, you'll find that you can't pronounce half the ingredients, or it's just ingredients you have no idea what they are. And a lot of it is in pre-workouts and a lot of things in that realm.
But the good thing is pretty much everybody now has a smartphone, so it's pretty easy to go into a store and Google it, right? Most supplement companies that sell good products will have a lot of information on their website. They'll make it easy to find clinical trials, peer-reviewed sources, and detailed information about why this product actually works.
And where they get it and what's in it.
And why it's from a trusted source, right? Any company that actually goes through the lengths to source things properly is going to want to tell you about it, because believe me, it didn't just happen overnight, right? They did a lot of research to find those products, so they're going to want to tell you about it.
Exactly, and there's no reason not to.
Yeah.
You're just proving the quality.
If you have nothing to hide.
If you have nothing to hide.
Yeah, there's no reason not to. So it's a scary world out there, but the supplement industry is growing. A lot of people have found benefits from supplementing their diet. So there are still a lot of positives out there. I don't want to make this little episode too negative, but it's just important that you stay safe. We want everybody to have the tools to make informed decisions.
Yeah, do your own due diligence.
All right. Well, I guess that's it, Carlo.
That's it. I'm out of coffee.
Another one in the bag. I'm out of coffee as well. So that's it for us today. If you're interested in learning more, of course, you can visit us at DAV.life or davlife.com. If that's easier for you. You can find us on social media, and hopefully you'll join us next week for more Facebook Live, where we will have more topics. If you have any questions, davlife/contact. That's our contact form. You can find it at the footer, so you can shoot us questions, or just contact at davlife.com.
There you go. Email us. Yeah.
Emails. Or you can just comment right here on the Facebook feed.
Right.
Find those
or
as well.
You have topics that you want us to talk about or any questions that you want us to answer, definitely hit us up.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you guys next time.